Hey cuties, this is The Dark Side of Perfect. I'm your host Maggie, and today we're going to be talking about the myth of having it all together, aka routines and habits. This is episode 5 of this podcast so far. If you haven't listened to the last couple of episodes, I would recommend going back. We talk about some definitions and ideas that will come up again in this episode. Well, let's get into it. As I was writing the outline of this episode, I realized that there are two things on this earth that I can talk about for endless periods of time, and those things are Taylor Swift and routines. So I broke down my outline into a very high level overview of routines, how they show up, how you show up, and using this episode to look at the system and remove shame around breaking habits and finding out what fills our cup, what we actually want to include in routines, and then looking at what a perfect girl routine looks like versus what you want your routine to look like. In future seasons, I'll do more in-depth episodes on routines and habits, and I'll go more into what I do in my routines and habits. But for today's episode, it's going to be more of a high-level overview of how routines and habits show up in your life. When I think of a perfect girl routine, I think about those TikTok, Instagram videos of those girls who wake up at 5 in the morning and immediately brew their matcha, have some water, go to their workout class outside of the house, and then come back, eat breakfast, get their day started. And then at night, they do it all over again. They do their 5 to 9 after their 9 to 5 kind of a thing. And that is what I think of when I think of a perfect girl routine. And it looks like self-discipline, right? It looks like, oh yeah, they're waking up at 5 AM. But to me, what doing that routine feels like, it feels like it's self-surveillance, like I'm putting on a performance of who I think I should be, what routine I should be doing based on what I'm seeing these girls do and the life that they have that I want to some extent, doing the workouts, drinking the matchas, that all looks very nice and posed and perfect girl looking. And I just think that those habits and those routines, while being an aspirational sort of goal, are not fit for everyone's lives. It's not fit for my life. I don't like waking up at 5 AM, but I do like to wake up in the morning and have a slow morning. So I wake up earlier than I need to, but I don't wake up that early. In this episode, I want to reference two self-help books I've read recently that I think a lot of people reference when they talk about routines, and I want to use some of the points from them to back up what I'm saying in this episode. So those books are Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you don't know what this book is about breaking your habits down into smaller tasks so that you can accomplish the life that you want through habit building. What his main thesis of the book is that every action you take is a vote for the person that you want to be. We copy outcomes instead of identity. For example, when I'm copying the 5 a.m. outcome, it's because I want more time before work, not because I'm embodying the identity of a person who is a morning person and wakes up at 5 a.m. That's not who I am. That's not my identity, but I do crave the outcome. Therefore, I wake up a little bit earlier than I need to, but not necessarily that early. And then he also talks about adopting habits that belong to someone else's life. So taking those perfect girl routines and not applying the full context of someone's life to them and just craving the outcome that they get. The second book I want to talk about is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Basically, he talks about some quantum physics elements of life and how energy matters and how you can reframe your mental processes in order to recreate identities and find something more aspirational through mental practice. His thesis of his book is that we unconsciously recreate familiar identities even if they don't fit into who we want to be or who we are today, but we go back to who we used to be and the familiar feeling because our brain craves that. I will reference both of those books, both of those theses in this episode today. So I want to talk about why routines matter for a second. So before we go into, oh, then what should my routine look like? What is my perfect girl routine? Which I'm not going to tell you what your perfect girl routine is. That's for you to figure out. I'm going to give you the steps to figure out how to break some of the habits in your mind to get to the aspirational routine that you want. But first, I want to talk about why routines matter. The brain is always looking for safety, predictability, control, which I talked about in the perfectionism episode. When life feels overwhelming or uncertain, routines promise order. That sense that if we just do the perfect sequence of things, we can stabilize how we feel. From a neuroscience perspective, predictable patterns lower cognitive load and reduce stress because the brain doesn't have to make as many decisions. So it's a lot of that decision fatigue. If you have a routine, you feel less decision fatigue. But if you're copying the perfect girl routine, then you'll have to make more decisions. It makes the barrier to entry really difficult, which I talked about in my goals podcast. Perfect girl routines are pushed so hard because they don't just sell productivity, which we all want productivity in this capitalist world, but they don't just sell that. They sell emotional regulation. They imply calm, confidence, and self worth are earned through discipline and structure. So mentally, that's appealing because it gives anxiety something to do. Emotionally, it suggests that chaos is a personal failure rather than a human experience. So if you're not hitting the discipline and structure of these quote unquote perfect girl routines, then you're feeling the chaos and the personal failure of not sticking with the routine eternally. So if you start a routine, if you break it, if you go on vacation, if something happens, if you get sick and you break it, then you feel so much cognitive load and personal failure because you didn't stick to what you said that you would. But that's not a failure. That's just what is pushed in our productive world. The problem isn't routines. The problem is when routines become a measure of moral worth instead of a tool to support your life and the habits that you really want to help you fulfill your goals. When structure turns into self surveillance, the routine stops regulating the nervous system and starts reinforcing that pressure, comparison, and shame. Routines are incredibly important. They're important to reduce cognitive load, reduce stress, know what you're going to do in the morning. They help you find motivation. They help you reach after something that you want to do and help you maintain the different aspects of your life, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But if you're trying to copy someone else's routine without context of their whole life, then it becomes something that is weighing, just like the idea of being perfect is weighing, which is why we are talking about routines. It is such a popular subject in the perfect girl, it girl world to talk about routines and talk about morning routines and night routines and what you're doing. But no one ever talks about the negative effects of that, of what that narrative is really pushing on your psyche as a normal person. Or even as an it girl who maybe doesn't want to perform all the time and maybe just is having an off day, or maybe wants to achieve something else, or maybe keeps finding herself falling back into the same old familiar patterns, but wants to move forward. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, why doing everything right still feels wrong? A couple days ago, I was put in a situation where I had to take over something and I had to fall into a role where everything needed to be done perfectly. And it's not usually a job that I have, but I did it and I knew I could execute it well. And I was proud of myself. I was like, oh, wow, I really pulled this out. I did it. Everything's set up. Everything's perfect. Everyone will be so pleased that everything is perfect. And then I went to bed and I was laying there and I couldn't shut my mind up. The mental noise was so loud. I couldn't fall asleep. I had so much anxiety about everything. And it's not that I didn't like doing what I was doing. I'm a project manager by heart, I'm an event planner. I'm an eldest daughter. This is the role that I step into. I solve problems, I fix them, I have everything together. I know exactly what I'm doing all the time, or at least that's what it seems. And then after the adrenaline of stepping into that role, my mind won't shut up. The body is conditioned to familiar emotional states. I've done a ton of work to come out of this anxiety ridden perfect girl aesthetic that I've always tried to attain. But when I had to step back into that situation and have it all together for a short period of time, all of the stress of before, of that familiar state that I have lived in for so long, came rushing back to me. My behavior in life has changed. But as I step back into that role, my nervous system wasn't really connected with the good intention of what I was trying to do, right? It just wanted to fall back into the familiar emotional state of stress and anxiety of being that person. So your nervous system isn't connected to intention. And breaking the habit of being yourself talks a lot about this, about how you can have the best intentions with your routine. You can want to move forward, but you're going to fall back into what you used to be, or you can lead with the best intention of, I'm going to set this all up, it's going to be great, and I'm going to remain calm. But your brain doesn't feel that way. Your nervous system doesn't feel that way. It feels like you're sliding back into who you used to be. So, all of these things, maybe not with such a convoluted example, but if you're starting a routine where you want to move forward with something, a goal, and then you break it, you get sick, you don't do it, then you fall back into a routine that you used to have, it leads to withdrawal and recession from habit to find the old chemical baseline. In Atomic Habits, he talks about this in a way where habits feel uncomfortable before they feel natural. And I think that's so important to think about, is that if it's uncomfortable, you have to get over that barrier before it starts feeling natural. And early success does not equal internal integration. That's why routines and habits break and return to the norm with change. Because early success, if you do the habit every day for a week, they say it takes 7 days to make a habit. That's not always necessarily true. If you do a habit every day for a week, that doesn't mean you're going to keep doing it. So, to correct for this, I want to talk about how routines aren't about control, but identity and identity building, really forming from I'm doing this to I am this. Small repeated actions compound in to identity through consistency. In Atomic Habits, he talks about the 3 layers of behavior change, which is outcomes, what the habit will get you. For example, I want to be more calm, or being calm is the outcome. The process is what you do to get to the outcome. For example, journaling to be calmer. The identity is who you believe you are. So instead of, I am someone who does calm things, you then become, I am someone who is calm. Earlier today, actually, I was thinking about going to the gym, and it's freezing outside. I think it's 8 degrees here. And I was thinking, I don't want to go to the gym. It's cold out. I have to go put on workout clothes. I have to go. And then I thought, no, I don't want to just be stronger. I want to be someone who cares about my physical health. I'll talk about this in a couple minutes, but I have a chronic illness, and lifting weights, doing Pilates, doing yoga help with my chronic illness. They're the only things that really do help. So it's important to me that I am someone who cares about my physical health and goes to the gym. We get stuck changing processes to get to an outcome without touching identity, which makes the habit feel fake and short lived. So if you think, I want to be calmer, I'm going to journal, and then that doesn't work, and you think, okay, then I'm going to meditate, instead of in the moment thinking, I am someone who is calm, and taking 3 deep breaths, naming 3 colors, grounding yourself in the moment, but still feeling so much anxiety and restlessness and not doing anything about it other than changing processes every 10 minutes to try and make yourself feel calmer, then that's not going to really get you to who you want to be. For example, with my chronic illness, I have to listen to my body. Every day might look different for me because I can't commit to the outcome. So I am someone who listens to my body. That's my identity. The real trick is being consistent enough to reinforce identity. So for me, I am someone who listens to my body. If I don't consistently listen to my body, if my body says, you're having a flare up, you can't lift your leg, and I do, then I'm not someone who listens to my body. Another example with that is I do everything, eating, working out, sleeping, skincare, everything based on my cycle as a woman and where I am. So my routines look different every week, But I am someone who listens to my body. And that means that consistently I listen to what cycle I'm in, what my flare ups are looking like, and I change what I'm doing in order to listen to my body. Because the outcome doesn't always matter if you don't know what identity you're trying to build with that habit that you're trying to do. Breaking the habit of being yourself tells us that you can't create a new life with the same internal state. Identity change precedes behavioral consistency. So you need to think, who am I? What am I doing? And then picture it. Think about it. Think about what future you looks like. And then you have to change your thought processes in order to change your behavioral consistency. Your routine has to fit who you actually are and not who you think you should be. I'm going to say that again. Your routine has to fit who you actually are and not who you think you should be. So if you're thinking about that perfect girl routine and that's what you should be doing, thinking I should be waking up at 5 a.m., why? Are you someone who wakes up at 5 a.m.? Are you someone who needs that much time before work? If yes, great. Maybe that's a good habit for you. If not, that's fine too. Okay, so I want to talk about the parts of life and how they're all interconnected and how we build routines around them. So there are five. It's physical, which is like movement, sleep, energy management, mental, which is focus and learning, emotional, stress, joy, social connection, things like that. Spiritual, values, meaning grounding. It doesn't have to be religious, just something spiritual within yourself, very grounding. And then financial, which is money habits, future trust. Atomic Habits frames these parts of life as dependent on each other and how neglected environments can cause friction in your life, which can then make parts of your life harder and then make all of your life harder. Breaking the habit of being yourself frames these as chronic dysregulation in one area keeps your body in survival mode. So if you're not focusing on one of these ever, then you're going to stay in fight or flight all the time and won't be able to reduce your stress levels in the way that you want to. You won't be able to manage them appropriately because one of these will be off. The balance, the harmony of the parts of your life will be off. You don't need to do all five daily. I'm not saying that. But all five matter over time. And it's important when you're building your routines, building your habits, to consider all of these areas. For example, if you decrease your movement, you're going to increase your stress levels. If you are not looking towards your financial future, that will increase your stress levels. But if you increase your physical, your movement, it'll decrease stress levels. So they're all connected in some way. And I find that what I was lacking in before I started all of this was spiritual, which is interesting because I've never been a terribly religious person. I am kind of hippie woo woo, but I don't practice it all the time. And once I started doing grounding activities or reading books about spirituality or even considering like how the universe plays into my life, doing different manifestations, things like that, it helped. And I don't think it was because I was manifesting and doing all of those things. I think it was because I internally was feeling the spiritual part of my life increase. And so then all other areas of my life started to fall into place because I was doing all of them except that one. And then all of a sudden, things happened. So maybe there's a spot in your life, a part of your life, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, where you're feeling like you're not giving it the attention that it deserves. And then it's throwing balance off in the rest of your life. When you think about your routine, don't think I'm going to optimize my routine. You are not a robot. Think regulation. What part of my life is dysregulated? Which part is getting less attention and maybe needs more attention? Which part have I been neglecting for a while? For any what reason? So let's talk about real fast Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, the book, and how It talks about how you want to return back to your old life, how your mood wants comfort and is kind of against what future you wants because you're trying to stay in the past. So, what this really leads to is self trust and alignment, making promises to yourself, finding alignment in all of the parts of your life. Don't ignore your body or don't ignore the mood in favor of the plan. What I say to do instead is just do a small part, start. Choose a different thing that moves towards the plan. For example, if I were thinking, I want to go to the gym today or do Pilates or whatever, but I'm really not feeling it, then I'll usually just do like a 5-minute stretch. I'll do a small part. I'll choose a different thing that moves towards the plan. In Atomic Habits, he talks about a habit loop, and I also want to bring in habit stacking to this. So, the habit loop is a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. So, for example, I have super acne prone skin, and it is very important to me that I wash my face every night. But sometimes I want to not wash my face or I want to go to bed early. But the cue is PM, a time. The cue can also be an emotion, like I'm feeling stressed or something else happening, some other external factor. So my cue is 9 p.m. hits. The craving is that I want to feel clean, right? The response being, okay, I'm washing my face. The reward being, then I have all the makeup off my face and I go to bed without makeup on, and then I'm less likely to get a breakout. That's a harder one. Let me go through an easier one. When I feel stressed and I recognize that I'm feeling stressed, that's the cue. The craving I want is to feel calmer, lower my heart rate. The response to get to that craving is that I do a breathing exercise, box breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, belly breathing. And then the reward is that I instantly feel a little bit better, that I instantly get that relief. A lot of our habit loops, without thinking about habit loops, is something like cue, I get stressed out. Craving, I want to feel calm. Response, I bite my nails. Reward, it gave me something active to do. So I guess what the craving really was action, not calm. But what I really am aspiring to is calmness. But doing the action makes me feel calmer. So biting my nails is the response that does that craving instead of doing a breathing exercise, which is fine. But I don't really want to be someone who bites my nails. I like having long nails. My sister's a nail tech and she values nails a lot. And so I've been trying to stop biting my nails. So I'm trying to reroute my habit loop to be craving calm action and using that action to be breathing. Habit stacking is one of my favorite things to do. You're doing something active with something passive. For example, going on a walk while listening to a podcast or doing the dishes while watching your favorite show. I like to stretch while I'm waiting for my coffee, or at night when I'm doing my skincare. I have this cream that I have to leave on for 5 minutes to dry before I can moisturize. And so while I'm waiting for it to dry, I'll do some stretching or I'll do the dishes, something like that. I think an also really important thing to talk about in this section is how long things actually take. It doesn't take as long as you think. I guarantee it. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. Like, oh, the dishes are dirty. I don't want to do them. It's going to take me forever. And that's a lot of mental energy to unload right now. Doing the dishes takes like 5 minutes. And so timing yourself doing things and then having a list of how long things actually take you can help reduce that barrier to entry. Going back to the point of letting your past run your future, we crave the feeling routines give us, and familiarity pulls us back to comfort. So we need to find something new to crave, which is what I was talking about with the action versus calm and how those things can go hand in hand with biting nails and breathing, but just rerouting that craving into calm and breathing instead of action nail biting. Something that I hear a lot of is that there are not enough hours in the day. Life is busy, capacity is real. But when I was in grad school, I was in the car one day after I did class in the morning and then I went to the gym for Pilates and then I was on my way to work. And I was talking to my mom in the car and she said to me, "How do you do it all?" And I said to her, "There are enough hours in the day for what you prioritize." So I can do it all because all of those things were important to me. All of those things were relevant to my life. All of those things were things that needed to be done. And reframing that I don't have time to this isn't a priority right now changes my life. And I think I've talked about it in every single episode I've done so far about priorities and how thinking I don't have time, changing it to this isn't a priority right now, reframed my thinking so heavily. And it's not negative, it's not a shameful thing. I don't have time to write right now. I love writing anything, it's my number one favorite hobby. I don't have time to write right now because I'm working on these nonprofit proposals and doing my podcast. And honestly, that's fair. Writing is not a priority for me today, but I do have a plan to write next week. It's in my planner. I already wrote it down. I have the plan because writing is a priority for me. It is, but it's not today. Breaking the habit of being yourself says that survival mode collapses long term thinking and that creates the not enough hours mindset. So, when you're in survival mode constantly, when you have that dysregulation of parts of your life, and you're not feeling the work life harmony, you're not feeling the hobby life harmony, you're not feeling the family personal life harmony, it collapses long term thinking. You literally cannot think in the long term and form habits that you want to do. You want to sit on the couch and you want to doom scroll and you want to watch TV and you want to rot because you can't think past the survival mode. So, step one is getting out of the survival mode by figuring out what part of your life is dysregulated and reframing some of the thinking. Because when you change your thinking, you change yourself. And it's hard and it takes practice. It does. But you can do it. On the idea of work life harmony, I want to talk about work life balance, work life harmony. So, balance implies equal effort at all times. And when I was in my business program, we talked a lot about work life balance because we were all business majors and we wanted to figure out how, when we enter the real world, the job market, how we were going to balance work and life. Because both of those things are important. And what we really came to the conclusion is that life moves in neurological and emotional cycles, and systems evolve across seasons of your life. There are waves of intensity, waves of rest, and harmony means knowing what deserves your energy right now and why. So, balance, equal effort at all times. And that's so hard to maintain. Sometimes work needs more attention. Sometimes your family needs more attention. Sometimes your relationship needs more attention. Harmony is knowing what deserves your energy right now. And if you're having the overload of one end, for example, work, pulling you down so hard, it's important to know that, yeah, that deserves some of your energy, but it doesn't need to have all of it. So then you can find the harmony where the actual balance lies instead of having equal effort all the time. All right, now that we've talked about all of that background of why routines matter, harmony, the stress response, let's talk about what routines look like, how to build them, and I also want to bring up routine menus. So, in stable seasons of your life, fixed routines make us feel good. We feel like we can maintain the routine in stable seasons. But then you have a vacation, you have illness, you have stress, and that fixed routine collapses. I really think that aspects of your routine work better fixed. For example, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I do my skincare. Non negotiable. And then I figure out what's next based on my season of life. I want to be sympathetic to emotional dysregulation that can cause the break of routines. Right now, though, I'm just talking about in general life. So, aspects of your routine that working better fixed are brushing teeth, washing face, things like that. A routine menu are options to support identity that fit into the 5 areas of your life. For example, a routine menu could look like, okay, I wake up, I have the non negotiable of brushing my teeth and doing my skincare. Then I have an option. of what I'm gonna do. If I'm feeling higher energy, I'll do a workout. If I'm feeling lower energy, I might scroll on Pinterest. If I'm feeling medium energy, maybe I'll read an article or two, and maybe I'll expand on that, write an essay, do something like that. And the point of the routine menu is not to write down options based on someone else's life. They're to write down things based on your life. I love yoga, and if I'm feeling high energy and I'm feeling good for that, then that is my activity that I do after I brush my teeth, wash my face. And I'll usually make a coffee, set it up, drink coffee instead of chaturanga. We've all had those days. But then writing is another thing that supports my identity. I am a writer. I love writing. And if that is the choice that I choose, great. It supports a part of my identity. So that was physical, mental. Then there could also be the option of reading your Bible or journaling, whatever suits your fancy in that. Or maybe reading if you're feeling that, learning something new. When you're creating the routine menu, you can write it all out. One of my favorite creators has these cute menus that she makes every season that matches the season, and they're adorable and they're physical things. So if you have an ADHD brain and you can't remember what's on your menu, write it out, put it on your fridge. On my iPad, I do have a little list of hobbies that I'm currently doing, and I'll sometimes choose one for my routine menu. What this does is reduces the friction of creating habits. So when you have your menu, you can look at it and it'll reduce your decision fatigue and it will increase your consistency because the choice of it increases safety and the safety of knowing what you're doing and then reducing the stress of deciding and figuring out what it is. And then if you notice that you're never choosing something on your routine menu, take it off and replace it with something else in that area because clearly that wasn't a priority for you. And clearly it was not something that you really felt your identity was drawn to. And it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. I feel like I've said that in every episode also. What this does is protects consistency when your capacity changes to promote harmony. So you have your menu as your capacity changes. If you're having a flare up, if your body is telling you something else, if you slept horribly last night, then your capacity changed, but you'll still have harmony in your identity. And it also, I've noticed, allows for the creation and protection of whimsy. Every day can look different. You'll have your fixed non negotiable things, but you'll also have some whimsy, some alteration in what you're doing every day. And you'll have a list of all the hobbies that you're doing that you want to do, and then you'll do them because you'll see it and you'll say, wow, you know what? I'm really actually feeling very inspired to do this today. I really do want to do yoga today. Let me go find a YouTube video. So let's wrap this up with some more things from the books that reinforce what I've talked about today. So imagine for a minute an ordinary ideal day for you. Let's say it's a Tuesday. You wake up on a Tuesday, you brush your teeth, you do your skincare or whatever your morning non negotiables are. You make your coffee, your matcha, your tea, your lemon water, whatever you're doing. What are you doing after that? What does an ideal day look like? Do you work out after that? Do you do your creative endeavor? Do you call your mom? What does that look like for you? Then think, okay, what is the identity in this ideal day? What is this ideal person on an ordinary Tuesday? What is she doing? What is the I am statement in this routine? Breaking the habit of being yourself talks a lot about how mental rehearsal primes neural pathways and paves the way for change. So, if you're thinking about your ideal day, keep thinking about it. Hold it in your brain, hold it in your heart. Who are you in this ideal day? And then rehearse that. And then it'll prime your neural pathways so that when you do physically do it, you can embody that in yourself. Atomic Habits tells us that to change habits or add a new habit, we need to make it obvious. So we need a clear cue 9 p.m., 8 a.m. I'm getting out of bed at 8 a.m. Clear cue. Or your clear cue could be, my heart is racing. Your clear cue could be anything like this. Make it attractive. Have an emotional pull to it. Make it easy. Reduce the friction. Have a water bottle next to you all the time. Have an alarm set on your phone. Reduce the friction. Make it satisfying. Have an immediate reward. Maybe put something nice tasting in your water, like a Crystal Light packet or something. Have your breathing exercise, which lowers your heart rate. Immediate reward. This is so important in Atomic Habits, and I think it's one of the things that people don't really talk about because they think push productivity all the time. But if your routine requires motivation, it's poorly designed. And if returning feels too hard, then friction is too high. For example, I don't want to leave my house to go to the gym. Putting on an outfit and leaving my house and driving in the freezing cold to go to a Pilates class sounds so hard to me. But the problem isn't lifting or doing Pilates. I love doing Pilates. The problem is leaving the house. So I need to reduce the cost of doing that. So I'll do Pilates at home. I'll schedule a class in advance, lay out my outfit the morning before, and I'll leave the house before I even have time to think about it. I need to reduce the cost. I also want to talk about getting off the habit of your routine. For days, weeks, you wake up, you do your movement, you journal, you have your matcha, you do your perfect girl routine that you've seen other people do 100 times. It works, and you feel better, and you think, wow, these things really do help me. And it works until you have to work late one night or go early one morning. It works until you sleep bad. It works until you get sick. And then you miss a day, and then you miss two. And then all of the mental anguish hits. I lost discipline. I'm disappointed. I'll start again Monday. What happens here is that the cue was changed and the routine wasn't redesigned. The cue was disrupted. You slept bad. You got sick. And then you don't crave the routine, only the outcome. So you skip it. And then the relief from the pressure of having to do the process that you don't really crave reinforces the avoidance of it. So what do you do when that happens? When you think, I lost discipline, I can't get back into this routine. You switch the question. Why can't I do my routine? Becomes, who am I trying to be even now? Make it easy. Journal one sentence. Do one stretch. Do a habit that feels too small. It feels so small, but you can start it. And then when you go on vacation, if that's important to your identity, you can do something small. So if the cue, waking up, the response is an action that votes for the identity. It doesn't have to be the perfect girl routine. It has to be something that reinforces what you know about yourself and who you are. Continuity is better than intensity. Stretching for 5 minutes is better than stretching for an hour if it means that you do it often and that you reinforce the identity of I'm a yogi or I'm someone who cares about my physical health. Return to the identity, not to the routine. And also anchor the habit in a low-effort daily action and make it a non-negotiable. So I make my coffee, I breathe while it's brewing. Non-negotiable. Having it all together is about harmony and identity, and falling off is part of rewiring and part of finding who you really want to be. I really believe that if we want something and we prioritize it, there is time. And life is short, but it's also long. And there is time for you. There is time, even if you feel like there isn't, to take a deep breath and return to self. Because you matter. You are so important. And I saw this quote the other day that was the true love of your life is you. You need to find the harmony with the other aspects of your life to come back to self, figure out your identity, because it will push everything else about your life. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And I do want to do future episodes further in depth on habits and routines, even talk about my routine a little bit. And I hope that you are finding joy and connecting to self wherever you are today. If you liked this podcast, please follow, subscribe, comment on it. It really does help a lot. And I do have an Instagram for the podcast. It is darksideofperfect.pod. That is darksideofperfect, period, Pod. I will see you next time.